I am not a Clinton ploy or an actor. I am a witness to this.
David Hogg reported what was happening as he and classmates hid from the shooter. It was his instinct as a student journalist at Stoneman Douglas High School. But soon after, he became one of the most prominent voices for stricter gun laws. And this week, he was labeled a fake by some far-right websites and fringe social media users. One conspiracy used an interview he gave on an unrelated story while visiting California last year as evidence he was a paid actor. The top searches for him on YouTube ranged from "can't remember his lines" to "exposed." Even the U.S. president's son, Donald Trump Jr., was among the many people who liked a tweet criticizing Hogg. Now joining us are Nicole Verkindt and Jesse Hirsch. Nicole is the founder and CEO of OMX and a dragon on CBC's Next Gen Den. And Jesse Hirsch is a futurist and researcher based in Toronto. Thank you both for joining us. So I saw these reports quite quickly on Twitter and all these other things being shared. So who's sort of to blame here for something like this getting so much prominence that is clearly fake news? Jesse?
Well, I think the blame is spread quite widely. I mean, on the one hand, it's the platforms and their sensationalism and a business model that rewards attention by any means. But on the other hand, you have the people who are uploading these videos. But then you also have the people who are watching these videos, because the algorithms are just responding to engagement rates. And these videos were very popular, even if they were factually incorrect. And I think that's the problem, that we're used to news and having producers and people who vet the information.
It's curated.
Whereas we're now in an automated system where the algorithms can't really vet to the same way that a human can. So you can have videos that are wrong, that are defamatory, start to rise to the top and get even more attention. And I think that's part of the problem.
And Nicole, in situations like this, there is a lot of anger. There's a lot of emotion, especially when we're talking about, a school shooting like this. And isn't it that those emotions that sort of drive these sort of trending topics? Because that's where people are clicking. So is that part of the problem?
That absolutely is the problem. Yeah. And when I first started to think about this problem, I thought, well, capitalism will work its way through this. People will start to say, well, we don't trust these platforms anymore. We're going to go to new platforms, which will kind of incentivize the Facebooks and Twitters to get their act together and to start to regulate this stuff and add more people to this problem. But then you say, well, wait a minute, this is inverse, because you're right. The more emotion, the more clicks, the more views, that's going to drive more ad dollars and it's going to be more profitable for the company. So it's a bit of an inverse, and that's what's definitely fueling this fire. And I agree with Jesse that it's absolutely everyone's thing they have to deal with. But I think now, because these platforms are truly in monopolistic positions in the marketplace, they have to take the onus is really, really on them. And there's a big effort that has to be done now.
So are they, like, we hear about them saying they're going to take steps. I remember Facebook saying they were hiring a bunch of people whose job were sort of quasi-journalists to go through all of this. Is anyone or are any of these companies doing anything that you think could actually make a difference, or are we just at the infancy stage when it comes to managing this?
Well, I think the companies do deserve credit that they are trying. I think they're throwing everything against the wall to see what sticks. But where I'm skeptical as to whether they'll be effective is they don't have the experience. We're talking about governance issues. And, whether it's governing the billion-plus users on Facebook or the same number that use YouTube, these are questions that, quite frankly, whether political scientists, whether social scientists, no one's really had to deal with these problems before. And I think it is both a result of the scale, but also the speed by which these companies, these monopolies have emerged, right? Yeah. They weren't around 10, 20 years ago. And so now that they are the dominant media, I don't believe that they can solve the problem, if only because they can't fully identify the problem, because they're right in the heart of it. You sort of need a bit of external perspective to offer that critical perspective.
Right. It is so difficult, too, when you start to build algorithms to do things, because there's so much nuance in what you say, and it's hard to pick up sarcasm. It's hard to pick up that nuance.
There's bias in algorithms. As much as you say, it's the computer. That way on purpose. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So, you say, it's the computer making those decisions, but someone programmed that computer.
Well, and YouTube and Facebook in particular are facing ideological pressure in which the U.S. right is saying, hey, you're censoring us. You're preventing us from sharing our perspective. Because there's a subjective side to this, that depending on where you are in the political spectrum, you might have a different view about how these events unfold. And so I think that's where these companies are hesitant to take too strong a line, because they don't want to alienate their users who may be of a different political ideology that may cause them to say that this is fake news or to question the facts of these particular videos.
But at a certain point, aren't they hurting themselves? When people are getting frustrated, you don't know if you can trust anything on there. At a certain point, people are going, you know what, everything on there is garbage. I don't want to do it anymore. So, like, there is some major incentive. There must be for them to make quick action.
Well, and that was my original point. And I kind of thought, well, they're going to become more like media curators. You know, the chief editor of the New York Times isn't going to put something out without fact checking it. But that's not the case here, because people have their own biases, and then these algorithms continue to feed those biases. So they get fed stuff that reaffirms their worldviews and will promote more clicks and more profit. So it truly is going to take something to turn this around.
So let's move on a little bit, and we'll touch it. We're still on the fake news thing, but we're talking this time about, hours after that shooting, automated Twitter bots were hard at work. They were, spamming pro and anti-gun messages, and then this week Twitter suddenly goes out and deletes thousands of these accounts. What do you think of this move that Twitter made to tackle the bots in this way, to go out and just close accounts?
Well, I think it's their attempt to try to address the problem. What they're trying to do is link accounts to human beings. So there still will be some automation, there still will be some bots, but they want those bots to be responsible. They want to prove that a human is actually in control, whereas what we were seeing was networks of bots, thousands of bots, kind of controlled by single individuals, sort of puppet master style. So I think they're trying to address it, but it goes back to the problem of the algorithm. If the algorithm works at the speed of the web, well, then maybe you want a bot to work at the speed of the web, to game the algorithm. So it does become an engineering process in which, whether it's people legitimately participating in the process or people illegitimately doing so, they want to do it as fast as they can, and that's where automation plays a role. So I think Twitter's going to be damned no matter what they do, but at least in trying to mitigate that automation, they may put some fresh air or put some sobriety into the kind of policy discussions that should be happening.
Now, Nicole, your thoughts on the fact that a lot of people from the far right were complaining that their accounts were shut down when they weren't in fact bots, they were real humans. Like, how challenging is it for them to figure out who the real people are and the folks that aren't?
I think they might have overdone it, because they did delete a lot of people who were real people, but I think they did it for just what Jesse said. They had to really show that they were doing something about this. To answer your question, I don't think it's that challenging. We do this all the time at the company I read, where we're cross-referencing data. We prove suppliers' locations by their geolocations. I mean, they're doing it with phone numbers at Twitter. So personally, it's a big data problem, and there's a huge amount of data on these social networks. But over time, I think you can have single sign-in user accounts. I don't think it's that difficult.
All right, let's jump to our last topic. The Winter Olympics wrap up tomorrow. The technology behind Britan's skeleton suits generated a lot of controversy in South Korea. The competitors wore these suits with drag-resistant ridges intended to improve aerodynamics, and it won. It won the medals. So it has people questioning, just how far is too far when it comes to technology and sport. Do you think there is a line there, or is sport just going to continually change with the more technology we have?
Well, on the one hand, we celebrate Olympians who are competitive, who go as far as they can go to win. And if that is using technology, I think we reward that. We say that that's innovation. Part of the issue is here access. If only one team has access to the technology, that may not be fair. And that's where things like intellectual property and copyright can restrict who gets access to a technology. But then the other issue is, are these humans or are they cyborgs? And the extent to which humans are using technology to improve their performance, I think that is a larger philosophical debate that gets into the doping and gets into the cheating dynamic.
I've heard the term digital doping as well, when it's using that technology to give you an edge. I don't know, do you think there's a line? Are we relying too much on technology and it's skewing things when it comes to sport?
Of course there's a line, and I actually have the exact same word in my head, which is accessibility. So we can't have this huge divide, but we also can't be afraid of technology. We need to embrace it. We're going to see a lot of stuff come out in the next 5-10 years around life extension for all of us. And so we also can't have the opposite side of the spectrum, where the humans are the people competing in the Olympics are actually subhumans compared to some of the rest of us. So I think we need to go with it and find something that's in between, that's still accessible.
All right, thanks guys. That's Nicole and Jesse. Nicole Verkindt is the founder and CEO of OMX and a Dragon on CBC Television's Next Gen Den, and Jesse Hirsch is a futurist and researcher based here in Toronto.